Merry meet and welcome to the Witch's Cauldron. My name's Paula. Today I've got a little bit of a different video for you. I am interviewing a friend of mine, NightShayde. He is a wonderful resource and has been a wonderful resource for me on darker aspects of magic and the dark arts. So, NightShayde, welcome to the Witch's Cauldron, my friend.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I am honored. And also, everyone, NightShayde has a podcast called Flatline to Beatline. I will link his podcast down in the description box, so be sure to go check him out. His podcast features pagan creators, writers, business owners, artists, musicians, and it's really a great way for folks in the pagan community to network and help support one another. So I want to make sure everybody welcomes NightShayde with open arms to the channel. My friend, I want to thank you. And I had put out on Twitter and on my channel's community tab places where I asked my subscribers what they would like to know if I had a interview with, a dark witch or someone who has a lot of experience with the darker arts. And before I get into those questions, would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself and about your journey and your actual magical practice?
Well, in short, I've been practicing traditional witchcraft for 31 years. The absolute up until February 2018, I was an atheist witch.
Okay.
And due to an out-of-body experience, my first one, I actually saw Azazel in the flesh, which made me a hard polytheist. And June of last year, I was called to practice Heathenry by dreams from Thor, and so it's really that's simple, really. I work with the Goetia and the deities and the primordial deities within the Goetia, and I incorporate that with other deities and other magical practices.
Okay, so for those who are not familiar with the Goetia, can you explain what that is?
Well, the Goetia in itself is a construct of what many people would think of as demons. In fact, I'd have to argue that in the Goetia you have primordial gods and goddesses like Azazel, uh, Astaroth, Beelzebub, Belial, Count Bodis, Astaroth. I think I said that, and entities like this, and that's what you're working with. And just like any other god or goddess, they have darker and lighter aspects, such as like the Morrigan and Bridget and Hecate and the Santismo Muerte. They have lighter and darker aspects. Each individual is assigned at birth one of these primordial deities in the Goetia, and another one later on in life. And that is one thing that I cannot stress enough. So many people castigate these deities, but in reality, it's a part of us. It's just another pantheon, if you will.
Okay, and yeah, because, and we've had some, very deep philosophical kind of conversations in the past offline. And I'm not what most Wiccans think of when you say Wiccan, modern day Wicca, and the way that it has kind of been morphed into, I think we kind of said fluffy bunny. I say unicorns farting glitter, and I think you said fluffy bunny versions of Wicca. And from my own practice, I know that Wicca does not mean that you're a doormat and that there is a balance between light and dark. There is a balance. You need to give equal homage to the goddess and the god. So, I completely understand that. And just for my listeners, I got an education from you a few nights ago when I was talking about an injury that, my better half had. And I had no idea that the entities of the Goetia had like healing powers and things like that. So I was very, thankful to be, edified about something like that because I was ignorant on that point myself. So thank you with that.
Oh no, absolutely. I believe I had you draw the sigil of Marbus, which is known for healing, and especially with medical issues in general, but primarily injuries. So it is just like any pantheon. It's just castigated and ostracized by the Abrahamic faiths.
Right.
They are the ones who determine them to be demons. And I'm not saying that they're, because they are kind of, I guess you would call it, say, the chief. And under them have underlings and soldiers, foot soldiers, things like that. And of course, yes, there's parasites and there are sludges and things like that to which they control. It just depends on how you want to work with them.
Exactly. And I think, in some of my past videos on my channel, I actually have two channels. I've got this one and a paranormal channel. And one of my friends passed away last December. And she loved doing like fairy gardens and things for her granddaughter. And that's how she kind of passed the time through her disease progression. And she made me promise to do videos about the dark side of the fairies and the light side of the fairies. So I did videos on the Seelie court and the Unseelie court. And most people don't think of, the Fae. They think of, like Tinkerbell. But that's really not what it should be. That's how we've been told and kind of programmed to believe. But the Fae are much like, the Goetia. They transcend witchcraft itself, and they're elementals. They're, very proud beings. And so when you and I started talking, that's what kind of clicked into my head, is that, you need to learn how to, work with the Fae, but you have to have a very, very healthy respect for them. And I would imagine that it's the same with the Goetia. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it has the same rule construct or framework with any deity. If you think you are equal to them, that is your first mistake. Secondly, if you think that you can trap them, and experienced witches will understand what I'm talking about. If you try to trap them into a shape, then you will lose. These are primordial beings that are much older than any pantheon you can think of. And one to understand, putting it in basic terms, you take Hecate. Hecate is considered part of the trident of witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Hecate is not Greek. Hecate is primordial. She is not part of the Goetia, but she is much older than what people think. And that trident of witchcraft is Hecate, Belial, and Lucifer.
Okay. Yeah.
So most people who use the Goetia are not Satanists and they're not Luciferians, even though there are some who do. But it's just usually traditional witches who, use or communicate with these, or communicate or utilize these entities for whatever reason. Some people stay strictly to the Goetia, and others just, mix pantheons.
Okay. That was going to be my next question, is it, in your because when we first started talking, you did describe yourself as a black witch. And I was very intrigued because there are so many different, depending on who you talk to, there is a different definition of what a black witch is and what the dark arts or baneful magic is. So can you tell me what your definition of a black witch and the dark arts mean to you in your practice?
Well, first thing I'd have to say that magic is neither light nor dark.
Right.
It's how the spellcaster utilizes magic. Secondly, a black witch is, in basic realistic terms, we're the types of witches that'll do things that other people are scared to do. We will traverse a path that others fear to do for whatever reason. But black witches are normally those who do work with entities like Lucifer and Satan. And I'm not going to get into that debate. But Azazel and Astaroth and Beelzebub and Count Bodis and Grand Marquis Forneus and things like this. They're just another. They're just a witch utilizing a very underutilized and recognized pantheon.
Right. And I loved it, because you allowed me to kind of pick your brain when I was doing my protection and defensive magic series on like hexes and curses and crossings and binding and vexing and all that happy stuff. And one of the things that was that my subscribers were very interested in was how to tell that they were cursed or have been cursed, and how to, like, what would be the best general protections and wards to put up to keep it from happening ever, it to start with.
Well, I believe with regards to protection, first and foremost, it starts with oneself. Because the strongest tool that a witch has in his or her arsenal is themselves. So the energy that manifests from an individual witch is crucial. So keeping that in check is top priority. And especially what goes on in your house. You spend so much time preventing things from getting in, but many witches don't focus on what's already inside. Various elements from salt and gopher dust and red brick dust and garlic and mirrors and mirror boxes and rowan trees planted outside, marigold and sage and thyme. And there are so many floor washes, one can use if you're looking into conjure and stuff like that. But it all starts with oneself. That is absolutely crucial. And is it possible for a witch to be completely balanced? No. But it is a goal that is the number one thing that should be achieved, is complete balance, which is never done, but you can come close to it.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, especially in the world that we live in now, we're so caught up in what I call doing in the doo-doo. We're so caught up in the doo-doo that we forget to take care of ourselves in the process. And, like with myself, even with being retired, I still take about 3 times a day, 5 minutes to just kind of ground and center any, kind of energy that's off. And I think that people just don't like the fact that the very first thing I tell them with anything to do with protection is that you've got to clean things up first. You've got to clean the bad energy out and replace it with something positive in its place. Because if you put down all of your wards and protections, without getting the bad stuff out. It's like locking a robber in the house with you. You know, you want to lock the robber outside the house, not lock him inside with yourself. So, you know, I completely agree with you. And one of the you know, basic things that novice witches need to learn how to do is, you know, ground and center, and then how to properly cleanse and balance your own energy in your own house. And then do your protection. So I completely agree with you on that.
I absolutely, I have witches of various experiences asking me what's the number one thing they should always learn, and that is protection magic before all else. Not defensive magic, because defensive magic is completely different.
Yes, it is.
Protection magic, a true witch will always remain a student. And protection magic is the foundation of witchcraft. And it takes lifetimes to master. And if one says, "Oh well," and I know everything, and that's false right there, because arrogance will is the number one trap so many witches get involved in, which can cause negative energy to manifest in a home or in one's life. So having personal protection and home protection is crucial, and always learn to adapt, because protection magic can become static,
Mm-hmm.
and witchcraft is about fluidity. So learning how to adapt and be willing to learn new things and change things up a little bit, because if an experienced witch were to put a curse on someone or a hex, it doesn't always have to be very massive. It could be what in the computer world one would call a black nurse DDoS attack, which is almost like if, let's say, a massive curse comes in like a sledgehammer beating the foundations of a house. Yeah, it'll get in there, but it'll also die out quickly. But if you were to take a little hammer and chisel and just little by little by little, the curse will not use as much energy, and it will get in because you keep using the same protective measures. You have to learn to adapt. That is absolutely crucial, and change things up.
I was going to say, because, you know, I started out with kind of, you know, one recipe for my witch bottles, and then my recipe has kind of, you know, morphed, and I've embraced other kinds of magic, like conjure, using some of the conjure methods of protection and clearing, versus what I learned as a new witch in Wicca. So totally, and then a lot of people forget that you have to like re-energize and feed your protections and your wards from, you know, time to time, and kind of re-up them. I like to say you have to recharge the battery every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Protective measures is just like the human body. You have to sleep. Even if you get into the medical professions like doctors and nurses, the first thing that they teach you in medical school is you have to be healthy yourself. You've got to take care of yourself, because you won't be able to help everybody else if you can't do that. So the same thing with protective instruments. You have to recharge it. You have to sharpen them. You have to clean them. You have to do these things so it can remain protective. But don't be afraid to just say, you know what, I don't want to use this anymore. I want to try something else.
Exactly, because um, I know in my own personal practice that the more comfortable that I got working with herbs and crystals and, you know, essential oils, and creating my own um, amulets, and doing talismans and things like that, um, I developed a deeper bond with certain herbs and gemstones and things. And then over the years working with them, I've discovered others that I also have a very deep bond with. And that only comes with the experience of actually working with those, you know, I'm going to call it elements, but, you know, the ingredients of witchcraft, so to speak. Um, you know, just as I don't want everybody to just think that, you know, Wicca, witchcraft is, XYZ, black and white, because it's not. It's exactly like you said, it's very fluid and it's a constant state of learning, whether you call yourself a white witch, a green witch, a kitchen witch, a black witch, a gray witch, whatever you name yourself. If you quit learning, that is a recipe for, disaster in my book of shadows.
Oh, see, I think you hit a very important part, Paula, is you have to be able to extend your knowledge to experiencing new things. Your example with the crystals is just like the Goetia. Um, don't knock it until you try it. Reach out and don't do it haphazardly. You study and talk to people who have worked with these deities. Just like if I wanted to know more about Bran or Bridget in the Celtic pantheon, I'm going to talk to witches who have, or druids or whatever, who have extensive knowledge of them, who have experience with them. So it's the same thing. You have deities in different pantheons that talk about help with medical uses, maybe illnesses and sicknesses. That's the same exact thing with the Goetia.
And I think that, one thing that a lot of, Wiccans, especially Wiccans, a lot of Wiccans don't like to be called witch, and trad witches hate to be called Wiccans. And, with me, then there are ones like me that I'm more traditional Wicca that does have teeth to it. I embraced both equally. And the one thing that I have always done is, if I don't know something, I'm exactly like you. I'm going to try and reach out and find somebody who can educate me. Because one of the best things you can be as a magical practitioner is humble enough to admit that you don't know it all. And there's somebody out there that can, help you learn and to kind of give you a little bit of guidance as you find your way down the path, whether it's the crooked path or whatever path you think that you're on.
Oh no, absolutely. I was always taught since a very, very early age that there's always somebody who's smarter, faster, stronger, wealthier, etc. So, and that comes with experience in life.
Right.
And that's just like witchcraft. Witchcraft essentially is a path of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And any which way that, whether it's spirituality or whatever, but the root of it is in nature. That's just a fact.
Exactly.
And I have not met many Wiccans who are not witches, because the old saying of every Wiccan is a witch, but not every witch is a Wiccan still stands, because I think I've only met 2 or 3 Wiccans that don't practice witchcraft, but I've seen some of their rituals, and well, yeah, that's witchcraft. Hello, that's I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just if the power goes out, it's witchcraft. No, I'm joking.
Well, I mean, it's a stigma because there have been so many stigmas attached, and people trying to put labels on everything. And that's what I said. I sometimes call myself a gray witch. Sometimes I'll call myself an eclectic, because I just do what feels right for me in that moment in time for whatever particular situation is going on. Um, and I have met a couple of people who say, oh, no, don't call me a witch. I'm a Wiccan. That's offensive to be called a witch. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm not even going to go down that road of arguing if you're that closed-minded about things. And here, this is kind of leading into the next, question that was asked of the subscribers and people on Twitter that I polled was, what is your stance on affecting someone's free will or affecting your own free will?
Well, that is a loaded question indeed.
Yeah, it is.
So I pose the question: if you have a best friend's about to commit suicide, if you go in and try to help them, you're affecting their free will. Everybody affects everyone's free will in some fashion, form, or way, whether it's positive magic or negative magic. Even if you were to see a family member in financial distress and they don't gamble, they don't throw their money away, they're just having a hard time, and you just do a prosperity spell for them. You are affecting their free will, even though it has good intentions. So I think the whole free will argument is pretty much null and void because yes, there are differences of opinion. My personal opinion is life is fated, but you have free will up until then because no human being, and even Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus can agree with this, is that you do not know where and when you will die.
Right.
That's a fact. That's just how it goes. So even with the best intentions, you are going to shift energy. That's what witches do, is manipulate energy either to benefit themselves, benefit others, benefit the world, benefit the planet. It doesn't matter. If you just let things be, I, I think it would be an ugly place in many times.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I kind of liken it. Now we're going to get into like cursing, hexing, that kind of conversation. And I kind of liken, affecting someone else's free will is I have to take a look at what their actions are. And is it, affecting an innocent, say, a woman who is pregnant that's doing drugs? She's affecting an innocent by doing drugs, okay? It's affecting the child that she's carrying. I don't have a problem trying to bind that bad habit, that drug addiction, for the benefit of an innocent. And there is the intent, and I don't have a problem trying to bind myself from a bad habit. Like if I smoked and I wanted to quit smoking, I'm okay with like trying to bind my habit. And then people get really weird because then they said, well, if you affect somebody else's free will, that's black magic and that's this, that, and the other. So I know for me, because I've made it very well known that, I won't do anything in the magical realm that I will not do in the mundane. So that pretty much means I'm going to do everything within my power to protect my family and my loved ones. Okay. And whatever that happens to be, that's the way that it goes down. Luckily, I have never hexed or cursed anybody per se because I've never gotten pissed off that bad. But what does it take for you? I liken it to like an escalation of force. What does it take for you to make that decision to hex, curse, whatever, someone?
One one word: justification.
Okay.
That's absolutely crucial. I myself, I put certain ethical guidelines when it comes to cursing.
Right.
And that would be, I do not curse a young child.
Right.
That I don't negatively bind or hex, vex, or cross a young child. It's not cool. With an asterisk next to that, once they hit 13, 14, 15 years old, everybody knows teenagers can be, in your words, boneheads.
Big bone.
So, doing some positive binding is there. And yes, you don't want to limit their learning life experience or learning experience, but you can curb it a little bit to help them. And as a parent, trust me, I've done it.
Right.
Um, I don't curse any of that stuff. Vex, hex, cross, pregnant women unless I see an absolute need to. Religious clergy, I do not do unless there is a serious justification. Innocent people, I will not do any of that. And lastly, I don't curse, hex, vex, or cross another witch unless the circumstances are very high.
I was gonna say,
Because
it would have to be very, very compelling for me
it,
to
exactly,
take
because
that on. Hmm.
you don't want to start a witch war like they did in the 80s and 90s. And, for those who may not want to curse, hex, vex, or cross themselves, doing that action and go to an outside source, my first rule that piece of advice I would give them is do not lie to the witch that you're seeking help from, because the vast majority of witches will stop that curse or hex, whatever, and reverse it onto you just to teach you a lesson. So, every witch, trad witches versus Wiccans. The reason why I bring this up simply because Wiccans have a religious framework to
Hmm.
fall under, but nowhere in Wicca does it say you cannot curse, hex, vex, or cross. Nowhere.
No,
Nothing.
quite the opposite. And
Exactly. And I know for a fact that Joel Gardner, Raymond Buckland, Selena Fox, Doreen Valiente, Silver Ravenwolf, they have all cursed, hex, vex, or cross. Somewhere in some time. With traditional witches, we put our own framework onto ourselves. We don't have dogma or somebody else to tell us that no, you can't do this, you have to follow these guidelines. We have our own personal guidelines. And any witch, whether they're Wiccan or trad witch, whatever, you're going out throwing curses and hexes out willy-nilly, you have become an enemy. That's what you become, and you're completely imbalanced, juxtaposed to those witches who refuse to learn anything considered dark.
right.
You're imbalanced, and you're a fluffy bunny.
Yeah, and I always kind of say to be able to protect from something, you have to know it. You almost have to, I hate saying it, know your enemy, but you need to know how to protect from curses, hexes, vexes, and whatever. You have to really kind of learn about them in order to learn how to protect yourself from them, or even to recognize the warning signs or the signs that you have been cursed or hexed.
Oh, exactly. I liken witches to medical personnel, doctors and lawyers. I'm sorry, doctors and nurses. Well, lawyers too, they can kill you. But they know how to heal and they know how to kill you. They know how to
Right,
hurt you, right? Just like a martial artist, an experienced martial artist will know exactly where to hit you to make it hurt, but they can also help you out in healing you. That's the same thing with witches, remaining that balance, walking that crooked path, learning how to heal in order to hurt. In order to hurt, you have to know how to heal. That is
right.
absolutely crucial, and anyone who has to stay on one side or the other is completely imbalanced and doesn't really understand the meaning of being a witch.
And even in nature itself, there is a balance. There is, light, there's dark, there's male and female. There is a balance in everything that is around us, and a balance in the universal energy. And I think that people who completely like, oh, I don't even want to know, are really missing out. Not saying that you have to practice, you know, dark magic, or, what some people would call black magic or baneful magic, but it does help to at least enlighten yourself and expand your mind to know what is out there and what to look for.
That is true. How can you protect yourself against something you don't understand? That's the definition of fear.
Right.
And you cannot show me a witch of any path that has some extensive experience as a witch that hasn't either cursed, hex, or thought about cursing or hexing or vexing or crossing, or at least thought about going to somebody else to do it for them. That you can only get punched in the face too many times, and
Oh, I'll
this
tell
is
you, I was this close with my ex-husband, and he deserved it, but I didn't do it because at that time I was very new to my studies. I mean, that was, 2006. That was 13 years ago. So I was very new into my studies and I didn't feel comfortable. Did I feel comfortable binding him from coming across my path? And hell yeah, I did. He's still in the freezer in the chill the fuck out position, and he's not ever going to get thawed out again. So, but I didn't actually, curse him or hex him because I didn't feel like I had learned enough about it to be able to do it and do it effectively and not have it blow up in my face.
that is very, very true. I mean, because you hit on certain points. Those who do not wish to curse or hex, will easily bring out the hot foot powder or the gooper dust to keep somebody for not. You say you have an uninvited guest or a guest that they're coming over and you don't want them to stay long, so you put hot foot powder down or gooper dust down at the threshold, and all of a sudden within minutes those people want to leave. Well, technically you're hexing them if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, so many people just they do not understand the meaning again of being a witch. A witch embodies so much,
Mm-hmm.
which goes into another argument of emotions versus logic. If I there is validity on both sides, because if you do a curse out of anger or hatred or pain, you say your significant other cheats on you and you put that raw emotion into a spell, more than likely it's going to be like a sledgehammer and it's going to come in, it's going to wreak havoc, and then it dies out quick. Or you
Mm-hmm.
can take a step back, wait a day or two, sharpen that sword, and it'll be death by 1,000 cuts. But at that time, it allows the people to ask themselves, do I really need to do this? And if you really sat down with yourself and asked yourself and still come to the conclusion, yes, this son of a bitch needs to pay, then the dude needs to pay, or even the woman. I'm not going to blame guys here.
Right, right. And that's so true because I've said in previous videos, I have done blood magic, and some people, especially in the Wiccan community, consider blood magic automatically to be black magic. And this was to protect an infant whose father had taken her out, put her in the car seat to go buy heroin. And he had done this repeatedly and then come back and he shot up, nodded off with a lit cigarette in his hand and set the chair on fire that he was sitting in. And, she was only 5 months old at the time, and smoke can kill an infant in nothing flat. And so, I did a blood magic spell with Kali to protect that child and to bring anyone who endangered or abused her to the, authorities for proper adjudication as Kali saw fit.
That the argument, and I hate to hear that actually happened to a child,
Yeah.
but the argument is flawed
Mm-hmm.
because you can use blood in money magic,
Yeah, you
prosperity
can.
spells, healing spells. All that's doing, depending on what kind of spell you're doing, is you're offering the universe, in which that's another disputed. People don't give the universe enough credit, but you're offering something to the gods or goddesses or universe or whatever. You're offering that, but it also seals that,
Right.
saying this spell belongs to me. And so many people do not give the universe, the ethos, the gods or goddesses enough credit because once a spell is cast, it is out of the spellcaster's hands.
Right.
It is disseminated or stopped at the behest of whatever you believe, the
Right.
gods and goddesses or whatever. So for me, being a heathen, a Vitki, is, if I put a healing spell out, more than likely the All Mother Frigg will say, yes, I'll allow that to happen, or I'll only allow that to happen on this timeline, and this is how it understands. Even though 99% of spells work, if you fall into that 1%, there's a reason why.
Right.
So this is what, and that comes with experience and knowledge and understanding. So the whole free will thing, just everything has to be put under a microscope of each individual witch.
Right. And, when I first found out about that whole situation with my grandniece, I was mad. I was so damn mad. I was angry. I wanted to wring her father's neck if I could have. Luckily, they lived 2 hours away from me. And because I was ready to go down there and literally strangle the man to death. And I went into my HP shop because I needed some supplies because I didn't have any of the baneful herbs on hand that I needed for this spell. And she's like, okay, you're coming in here, you're pissed off, I don't know what's going on, but what you've got in your basket, you need to calm down before you do one fucking thing. And that was it. You cannot act out of extreme emotions, and expect magic to work. And I actually sat on that spell for a couple of days. And you are exactly right. I refined it. I honed the edge of that sword. And, within 6 months, he had been arrested for DWI 4 more times in the state where I live. 5 times. He had already been convicted once prior to that. 5 times is an automatic jail sentence. He spent 22 months in jail for DUI, but also her mother was arrested for a DUI. And I didn't know she was driving around with the baby in the car drinking. So she also got a DUI. And so Collie brought everyone who put that child in danger to her swift justice at the way that she saw fit. And eventually, because I put a time limit on this child is protected until the day she dies, blood of my blood, blood and bone of my bone. Her father ended up overdosing from heroin, and because he wouldn't give it up. And he continued through about 14 years of putting her in danger. So, your magic has a lot of power, but you've got to be very thoughtful about it and not act out of just pure anger or pure emotion. You've got to get everything under control. You are exactly right.
Yeah, sometimes, even though raw natural emotion does help emphasize a spell, regardless of what kind it is, it also brings up different points to make is as far as the herbs, if you choose to use. You don't have to have hellebore or Atropos belladonna or anything else like that. You can use cloves in cursing. You can use mugwort, poison ivy, poison oak. You can use cinnamon in cursing, even though that's used as a booster. So there are. I've actually cursed with Italian seasoning and garlic. All right, it does happen. It's just, you just have to, if you have to know. And one crucial thing is, if you're about to curse someone and you are confused, like you can't get your mind straight, you don't know what to put into it, that is a clear sign that you need to stop what you're doing and think very carefully what you're about to do, because me personally, I don't believe in karma, but at the same time, a spell can backfire
Yes, it
on you, and that's what people need to understand is having a very honed, sharpened, and focused intention is far better than a blockbuster, bombastic, raw, angry emotion. Even though it can help, that can be a premise, but it's better to come in with death of a thousand cuts than a wrecking ball.
exactly. And I think that one of the misconceptions that a lot of people have about what some people determine, they call it black magic, is that, when you start learning the intent behind, like the blood magic that I did, most people say, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. But at the get go, if you say, oh, well, I've done blood magic, you're already, oh, she's a black witch, stay away from her, kind of thing. And I think that one of the things that I wanted from our conversation and my interview with you is to, number one, realize that you can't make broad sweeping generalizations about any type of magical practitioner, because there are just too many nuances and everybody's path is their own. And to be a lot more tolerant of one another in the pagan community, because there is a lot of, kind of infighting and, oh, well, this one's bad and this one's bad and that kind of nonsense. I just can't get off on it. But you can use each other for reference and as a learning experience through your networking.
Oh, absolutely. You just pointed out what I think you read my mind, is that the backbone to paganism is networking. I don't have a lot of knowledge on crystals, so I would go to very close friends that I know that does have that kind of knowledge, or maybe somebody who has an extensive knowledge in herbs,
Mm-hmm.
and that could help, whether it's in a magical perspective or even a mundane medicinal purpose. And this is absolutely crucial, is that we are all of the same ilk. We all are survivors of the witches they did not burn, male or female. That's a fact. And this whole turn the other cheek mentality is farce, simply because, the vast majority of witches nowadays are prior Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And any Christian that knows their Bible will understand the story that when Judas sold out Jesus, Jesus told his disciples, "Sell whatever you have to get. You have to get swords and shields because it's time to fight." So this has to be understood that if you want to lay down and be a bitch your whole life, then you lay down and do that. And you know what? Oh, it doesn't matter. Put it this way. Let's put it into realistic terms. And I'm going to be frank with this because I'm so tired of witches using this excuse. But just imagine if you're, let's say, a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and a guy or two or three break into your house, rape you, beat you, steal everything you have. Oh, it's okay. I'll just forgive them and let everything go. No, you want them arrested. You want them prosecuted. You want them imprisoned. And in the meantime, I'm going to curse the MFers unlike anything else, because that anger and that hatred and that pain is going to brew. And these fluffy bunnies that are out there saying we should all just get along, in which, hey, I'm all for utopia. I'm all for getting rid of wars and crime and drug use and all that. I'm all for that. But you know what? You have to have balance. There has to be darkness with the light. There has to be anger, hatred, and pain with the love and light. That's just a fact of life. And anybody that wants to stick to one side or the other is not only blind, they are stupid. And they are ignorant and they are inexperienced. And this is what needs to be uprooted and discussed in a very civil manner. And so I see so many clicks on YouTube of witches attacking one another because they're not of, oh, we're love and light and we're light workers and you're dark and black and all that. Well, in reality, we're of the same spectrum. Whether you see white or as the culmination of all colors or black as the culmination of all colors, either way, we are one. And to be call yourself a witch, you better understand the history of witchcraft. Understand those who came before you and who will come after you. And once we understand that, then maybe we can disregard the premise of this dispute between one another. Because yes, to me, labels are necessary. I do believe labels are necessary to identify who we are and who we associate with. If you go to China, they're Chinese. If you go to the Americas, you're American or South American or North American. If you go to Russia, depends on which part of Russia you're from. Labels are a part of human society to identify who we are. And this needs to be understood. So those who are trying to shed labels are really just hurting themselves because we are not, we are the world.
Right. But we can be a little bit more understanding about each other and try and understand each other's perspective. I don't have to agree with it, but I can understand it
Oh,
and not vilify anybody for it.
oh, absolutely. And, you know, there's so many, myself being a man, that I see so many people disregarding male witches.
Yeah,
Which is a whole new thing, but that has been broken through, and a lot of people are saying, "Hey, God, you know, especially women saying there are men witches out there. Let's give them some credit." And then you have those that are trying to bring back warlock, and that is the dumbest move you could ever make because that just doesn't work. So in the end, it's all about understanding each other's paths. As the old saying goes, you don't know a person until you walk a day in their shoes.
exactly. So, I think through our conversation that we've kind of been able to demystify a little bit about what it means to be a black witch, and the dark arts, and to have a conversation to maybe encourage others to have conversations with other people. So with that, I thank you again, NightShayde, for doing this not once but twice because of the audio problems. I really appreciate that. And do you have anything else in parting for my subscribers?
Oh, absolutely. Some insider information that's always overlooked. When you are doing a curse or a hex, vex, or a cross, it is absolutely imperative that incense smoke be your camouflage because any person who feels that they've been cursed or hexed can go to a witch or a psychic, and if you're not camouflaged, they'll find out who you are. Another way to know if you are cursed or hexed, primarily cursed, not just hexed, because that's a one-off thing, is you can actually go into the works of Bruja, and you can learn of taking a whole egg, which is also Appalachian folk magic and
Yep.
conjure.
Mm-hmm.
Take a whole egg and just wipe it over your head, in the shell, wipe it over it, all over your body, and then crack it into a glass. And if you see a black spot, then you know you've been cursed. And of course, it goes more extensive into that of reading the bubbles and the webs and all that other stuff. But that is one thing. But if I had to leave one piece of advice for your viewers, it would be to shed the bias and to shed the baggage of the past in order to see the light through the tunnel, to see the pathway forward.
Right. Exactly. And I know that, we're not going to have, this utopia and everything like that, but I do hope that this video will at least encourage people to have conversations, to not be afraid to reach out to others to try and learn something new or to educate yourself on something. And I really encourage folks to never stop learning, because your magic is doomed to fail unless you evolve. So with that, NightShayde, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate this. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. And with that, my friends, as I always say, merry we did meet, merry we will part, until we merry meet again. Be well and walk in love and light, everybody. Bye.
Blessed be and blessed beast.